picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
It's not that easy being green. Having to spend each day the color of the leaves.
Well, hello, it's Friday again, and now you know what that means. That means it's time to rewind very quickly and see how I spent my week working on models. Got a lot of great stuff done this week. Got the Gorn done, which you will get ready to see. I'm trying to do mentally in my head what I'm going to be doing on the computer in a minute, which is to re-edit. So we'll pretend that I haven't done anything this week, and this is being filmed on Monday, but it's not. So I can talk confidently about what I plan on getting done this week because I've already done it. Isn't time travel fun, timey-wimey, and all of that? So we got the, well, let's just go on ahead and cut this in. Good morning, it's Tuesday. We're back on Gorn duty. I've decided to name him Jason. Yes, Jason Gorn, as in the Gorn Identity. The Gorn Ultimatum, which is what I am offering today, a Gorn Ultimatum. I've patched up that seam, at least starting to patch it up. I'm going to repaint it in, but that's looking good. I'm not seeing, when I look down on it, I don't see the same seam there. Boy, say that 5 times real fast. I don't see the same seam there that I had in the past. So I'm getting back on a tunic, and I'm discovering that as much as it is about the dots and the polka dots, it's also about the space in between them, because the space in between is not blank. There's a little, you know, I show both of these, it's the same picture. There's things happening in between the dots, and this looks like a strong vertical and horizontal pattern, but it's not really. So I'm going to try to figure out how to best indicate that, but what I need to do is just kind of junk up the area in between the dots as well, so that they don't, it doesn't look like a polka dot, teeny weeny polka dot bikini here. So I'm just finding the best look for it so that I can so you can see the difference. That's just really stark polka dots there, and this is kind of muted, and that's more of the look I want. So I'm trying out various techniques to get that, and then I will carry it over to the back. And also, while I'm blending in that seam, I need to start blending the paint in on the seam around his head, which I think I've camouflaged very well. And then we'll be ready to put the guy together. I'm starting to percolate some ideas for the base, to dress it up a little bit. I'm thinking I might want to make a little deposit of sulfur and a little deposit of coal. You know, I might even see if I can find a in-scale piece of bamboo shaft, or maybe scratch build something that looks like a cannon, looks like cannon fodder, so that just to dress it up a little bit, to knock down some of the boringness of it. I mean, honestly, he probably could have stopped the base about an inch smaller, you know, inch lower than it is, and still be fine. It's a hefty base, and will take up a lot of space on your bookshelf should you decide to build one of these. But oh, the last thing is to do the alterations on this, which basically entail angling, putting some more angles on the top, and getting the metallic paints out. So very short punch list, and I think once I settle on a technique that I like on this, it'll go very quickly. There is one detail bit here and here that has to be like a high polished metal. It's very tough to see there, but it's more of a metallic high polish. So I may take I have some metallic vinyls that have that look like metal, and I may cut out some pieces to put there so that it looks, the texture of it, the finish of it looks different than the rest of everything else. But yeah, you can see the polka dots there are kind of drastic. This is much more on the realm of what I'm wanting. Okay, this may look a bit of a mess, but I'm really happy with it. What it took was a black wash. And what is a black wash but transparent smoke's big brother? What I was getting was too much of the stark contrast between the gold and the dots. And really, when I started working in the black into the creases and folds and stuff, that's when the rest of it really started to pop. Now what I've got left to do is a gold highlighting coat, which is going to bring up the overall tone of all of this. But what the black wash did was differentiate in here in the empty spaces, not necessarily where the dots were, but the empty spaces. And I worked that around into the collar and also into the back, and I think you're getting a very similar look between these two guys now. And it just knocked down the polka dottedness of it. And I think one more highlighting of the gold. I did notice that in the patterns, not necessarily in this photo, but in some other references I've seen and on the Blu-ray, there is a very noticeable cross-hatching pattern going on with the gold, particularly in the red dots. So I may go in and, just as I went in with black and kind of drew some lines, I may go in with the gold and just do some highlight lines into the various dots. But this is really someplace now where I think I can start massaging the details and get it to a position where I'm happy with it. And then it'll just be a question of hitting it with a satin finish to it's going to be weird because I'm going to have to hit the fabric with a satin finish to kind of get the glossiness, knock it down a little bit. But then I'm going to go back in on the skin with a dust coat to dull it back down, because I don't want the skin to have the same satin coat as the tunic. But yeah, I think overall it's really starting to look good. And what's kind of been bugging me, and I've had to keep reminding myself, is that he kind of looks out of balance, and that's because his arms aren't on. Once his arms are on, the balance of him shifts noticeably, and he looks a lot better. I'm just so used to seeing him without his forearms on that I have to remember that, yeah, it's not completely done, and once it's finished, he does occupy the space a lot better. And getting back onto the base, I'm thinking of well, obviously I need to put some detail in here, but I'm thinking of maybe making a little coal deposit and a little sulfur deposit. I think I've mentioned that, so I won't go on about it. But I've also got a secret weapon, and that is something that I didn't even know I was going to need until I started building this kit, because I didn't even know this kit existed at the time. But when I was out in California getting Steve Neal's bringing his enterprise back, we stopped at Vasquez Rocks. You can refer back to the video of that if you wish to remind yourself. But I was out at Vasquez Rocks, and we were out there after a time when the gift shop was closed, so I couldn't pick up a T-shirt or some other memento of Vasquez Rocks. So I went down and I scooped up a little pile of a couple 3 stones. The sand is unremarkable sand. You can get that anywhere. But I wanted to pick up some stones so that I can say I picked up a stone from Vasquez Rocks. Now, why I'm hesitant to mention that is because it's a national park, and I think if you take things from a national park, the Department of the Interior will knock at your door and say, you took something from my national park, we'd like it back. So I was hesitant to remember or to even publicize the fact that I took something from a national park. But if they come for it, I'll throw it out in the yard and say, you find it, you can have it. Anyway, I think I might put a couple 3 commemorative stones and add it to my base to say I was there. But coming along quite nicely. I'm going to let that black coating settle in for a bit, and then I will go back over it with the gold highlight. But you know what? I think drawing in these empty spaces really helped. I think it wasn't the dots so much. It was the open space between the dots that was bugging me. So there you go. Okay, for the last few minutes I have been reconstructing the translator. Did a little bevel on that bottom bit. I love my alliterations today. And I hacked off the head. There's a head hack and a bottom bit. Took that little knobby head off of there and put something under. Just shaped up some clear acrylic rod and kind of put that angle back on the top of it, because it's supposed to be more of a pyramid-y type shape there. So it goes on the belt. very well. So now I just need to paint it up. Okay, we're back at the translator, and I've got a coat of gray on it that was priming that has had a chance to dry, and now I'm going to do some silver and gold on it, and then we'll take a look at how this is aging in quite nicely. Yep, I think I'm ready for the gold highlight coat on top of that. Okay, we're going to be finishing up for the evening now. I did not work all day on this. I worked a little bit on it, but then I walked away and came back. But I worked mostly on the translator today, and I'm going to put another coat of the silver on top of this, and I think that top looks better than the top that was on it. Let me see, I've gone back in and touched the dark green and the light green again on the head. Still trying to figure out what the final solution to the iridescent on the eye is going to be, whether I need to start painting in some little flecks of color and then put the iridescent over it, because iridescent over silver isn't doing the trick, at least not to my satisfaction. And then we come to the tunic, and the tunic is looking very good. I have not put the gold highlight over it. I'll do that first thing in the morning. And finally put these arms on so you can get a good idea of what the whole beastie looks like. Now I went in and touched up the that seam that's more or less gone, and I went over the body color at least one more time to kind of work that in. But yeah, I think there's a and I also started putting in some tones and shades in the ground beneath his feet. So I think the next stage on that is, while this is all drying and I can, you know, epoxy the arms and the head in, and while that's all setting up, I can start working on the minerals for the rest of the base. So that's it for tonight. We'll pick it up again tomorrow. Okay, I think I'm happy to the point where I can join the forearms, and I think I'm happy with how that looks. At least enough that I can join the arms on there and then touch around it if I need to. But I want to get some final construction done on this thing today, which means gluing in the arms. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy for those, and I don't know whether I'm going to put the let's do the torso first and see how that goes before I put it on the legs. Now you can truly get an idea of what this beastie looks like. I've got the arms on, yes, and it does throw the weight and the balance completely back in the right ballpark. I was thinking that his body was a little bit disproportional, but now that the arms are on, it really does look a lot better. And here's the finished translator. Now, I did something different with his eyes that I may or may not keep. I just went in and dotted certain ones with different colors to try to get that pearlescent look. And I might put a wash over all the top of it just to dull those down, those little facets, because I wasn't getting quite the look that I wanted to get. So I'm still playing with those. Yeah, buddy, getting down to the finish line. Putting the arms on went so well that I'm going to go ahead and join up the hips. I think everything I need to do with the rest of him I can accomplish all in one piece, and it'll actually make it easier to deal with, I think, in some respects. Now I will leave the head off so that I can work on that separately, but let's go ahead and put these legs on. Oh, this was a day long in the making. I can't even get back far enough with, but look at this, all one piece. Yay, this is all one piece. I'd like to thank the Academy for this humble award. It's all together. But now that the legs are all in, I can do a final sculpting on his thong. Yes, this is the one end of a Gorn you don't want to be looking up, but it needs to be filled in. So I've got some, put you back, understand? I've got some epoxy sculpt here, almost out of it. I should have picked up more this year at Wonderfest, but did not. I guess I'll have to get some online. But I picked up a little wad of it, and now I'm going to finish up the sculpting. Okay, his mini skirt has been filled in. I'd wait for that to dry and then hit it with some paint, but clean up around the legs, but it's ready to go. And I did go in and brown his teeth up a little bit. But now I'm going to try one last thing on the eyes for today and then put it aside. But yeah, getting that all together was the big achievement for today. Last bit of work on the Gorn for the day. I did of course the head comes off. I did the yellow frilling on the tips of his horns there. And I took another stab at the eyes, which is a combination of clear Tamiya orange in the recesses and a silver blue on the bubbles. And I'll let that dry for a while and see if I'll come back to it, see if I still like it. If not, I'll change it again because that's what I do. But yeah, it's almost there, to quote the Rebel pilot, almost there. Good morning, we are back to the Gorn and we are truly in the final moments here. The last of the tiniest of details is this belt. In some cases it could be a belt latch. I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know from rewatching the video again and from looking at some photos that it is meant to be a metallic. See, here it is in the picture. It is meant to be a metallic, and it could be a belt. It could be the belt buckle, basically. So what I wanted to do was to recreate that, and since I've got a bunch of vinyl around here and some metallic, basically chrome vinyl, what I decided to do is, if I tried putting it on here, just cutting a piece out and burnishing it down to the resin, it doesn't stick so well because there's not a lot of surface area there, and what is there is kind of rough because it's got that resin porous nature to it. And if you burnish it in real good or really well, it's going to show the grain of the resin behind it. So not the first solution. Second solution was to burnish it down to a piece of stock sheet styrene. That not only is it smooth and you get better surface adhesion over the small area, but you get a nice flat surface, something you can cut. And what I did is I put some on there and cut it out to shape. And here you have the top and bottom of that buckle. And it gives it a little bit of dimension. And when I go to super glue that in place, it will go right about there, and it'll give me the proper difference in texture, because you've got skin and you've got fabric and you've got leather belts and all that kind of stuff. So this just gives it doesn't look like everything else. If I had painted that silver, it would look like everything else. But having this different texture to it really sets it off. So I'm going to paint this area in here black behind it, so that when I stick it down, any area that shows around the sides will be in black. So let me go do that real quickly now. Well, one of the many joys of being home all day is I get to be here when the mail comes, and I love getting things in the mail. I was always that kid that was sending away for stuff in the mail, and today I got something in the mail that I've been looking for quite a while. It is something that came from the fine folks at Timeslip. It is my next project. Yay! George up at Timeslip has sent me, and I'm just digging it out now. Join me, will you, while I pull this out of the box. Yes, it's a big box of peanuts he sent me. This is the... Yeah, look at all the parts. This is the space tug from Star Trek 3. Yes, this is, well, I don't know what its first appearance was. I think it might have been Star Trek 3. As they are getting ready to steal the Enterprise back. Yeah, there's the top of it. Some pretty castings. I'm going to pull all this out and clean up the peanuts, get them into a separate bag. And here are the lovely decals that go with it. So I can either make number 7 or number 5, I guess. Those are my choices. But I'm going to pull all this out and take a look at the parts and then have something to show you. Okay, here's what I got. I got one sheet of decals under there. I have one very well protected windshield that is vacuum formed that I am not going to take the protective tissue off of. I have a bunch of very finely cast resin pieces, and what I don't have are any instructions. And now I know the mantra that real men don't need instructions, but I think in this case I just might. So I may be giving Good George a call or a email to thank him for his arrival of the kit, but to maybe ask for some guidance in the instruction phase. But I'm looking forward to this. A, it's a nice tabletop size model. I'll have room for it once I'm done. B, I could put some maybe rudimentary cabin lighting in it. That would be fun. I know the cockpit is beyond basic as far as definition. There's just no detail to it at all. But I'm looking forward to getting back into the ship business. And like I said, I might put some lights in it. Who knows? So now I'm on to the part I like the best, which is the filing and cleaning of parts. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon. How about you? Okay, I got distracted and enamored of a new kit, so I cleaned up some parts and taped it together to see what it looked like, and started getting too involved with it. I need to put it away now so that I can finish up the Gorn before I start breaking out something new. But this is the lure of new resin. It does it to me. And I've already picked out some things that need correcting or aren't quite right, and I'll let you know about those in good time. But for right now, I need to step away and maybe go give some lunch. And look at this nice, neat. I did get a nice pen from George at Time Slip. Very funky. Nice little throwaway in there. The pilots, which are ridiculously large for those tiny, tiny chairs. I don't pretend to understand what that's all about. But yeah, it's looking good. It's just that I could while away the hours sanding up the resin. So I'm going to put it all away and finish up the Gorn. And here is the mostly completed Gorn. Now the only thing that stops me from saying 100% complete is the fact that I still have not glued his head on. Only because I'm still fiddling with the eyes or eyeing with the fiddles, and it's easier to work on him without having his head attached, and easy enough to attach it at the end. So no, he's not done, but his translator has been glued on, his belt buckle is on. I'm going to touch the paint around the edge to kind of blend that in. But the base, all about the base. Let's talk about that. I had thought about making using the old pink rocks that I had left over from the hopper, and using that to make some deposits of sulfur and, sorry, I had to stop and sneeze, making the deposits of sulfur and coal and things like that just to dress up the base. And even if I could find a nice piece of tubing that I could use as the cannon, but I don't know if that's appropriate. If it were a Kirk diorama with both of them, it might be more appropriate to have that on the Kirk base. But the secret weapon I have yet to put out here yet is to pull the stones that I got from Vasquez Rocks and put them on the base. I want to make sure everything else is done before that point, because I don't want to get any paint on them. I will just hot glue them in place after everything else is done. So let's make sure that everybody's happy with every aspect first. But yeah, it's getting there. He is getting there. If it ain't here by now, he ain't going to get there. But yeah, very happy with it. Again, take the head off so that I can balance him around. You never saw the thong painted. That's the painted thong. The less you see of that, the better. The happier you'll be. I don't know if I'm happy with the material on the tunic yet. It's one of those things where I step back and come back to it later and see whether I'm happy. I think I am, but that doesn't stop me from adjusting my opinion later on. But for now, it's done. Except for, the stuff that I said. Get him and take a picture from the shade. Maybe you'll get the dramatic lighting on him. There you go. There's that face. Something nice and atmospheric there. And back inside on the table for one last visit. Remember I told you about the stones. These are the stones. These aren't the Shankara stones. These are the Vasquez rock stones. Now, I cannot verify that these are natural growing, well, not growing, but naturally mined Vasquez rocks. I got them there. You'll have to take my word for them. I picked them up off the ground. Whether they're natural from Vasquez rocks or whether the Acme Rock Company of Toledo, Ohio dropped them off the day before, I can't tell you. Maybe they were, I don't know. They looked like they belonged there, so I had to take a couple, three. Like I said, the gift shop wasn't open anymore, and I wanted a memento. So, yeah, that's why I said I was hesitant to bring it up. If I had never made this model, the world would never know I had these. But because this model cried out, and the stones cried out, no hiding place, if you know your Babylon 5/biblical references. These stones came from Vasquez rocks. These are Vasquez rocks. Like I said, whether or not they're mineralogically belong there or the Acme Rock Company dropped them off, I don't know. I got them there. So there. That's all I need to know. But I'm going to take some 1 minute epoxy and epoxy the Roxy. And then we'll call this a done thing. I've just put on the last bit of JB Weld to hold his little noggin in place so that it no longer comes off. I don't think I will ever glue him down, only because it's going to make him so much easier to transport if I decide to take him to Wonderfest next year or to a show. He's so stable on top of this base that I think I can, if I ever have to wrap him up to ship him or anything like that, it's going to be so much easier to do if I can wrap the base up and him up. So I don't think I'm ever going to glue him down to the base. So that also gives me the luxury of working on the base more in the future if I feel like it. But for all intents and purposes, or as a friend of mine used to say, for all intensive purposes, the Gorn is finished. Yay! Done model. I always like to have a done model. Good way to finish a week with a done model. And ta-done. And well, that's going to finish us for this week. Got the Gorn done. Wonderful. I've got to start on a new kit. I've got this tug that came in yesterday, and I don't know how elaborate I'm going to get with it. It depends on how easily it goes together. Certainly lots of potential there. The danger is making something more complicated than the actual kit, the actual subject on screen, though. So we'll have to work that out. So until next week, when we'll be neck deep in tug, please be good to each other. Have a good fun week, and I will see you back here next time.